Hello and welcome to Deconstructing Dark Documentaries. My name is Elizabeth. I use she, her pronouns, and I love documentaries. Don't judge me, but the darker the subject matter, the better. I find human behavior and the choices that us people make to be fascinating. And when I really enjoy something, I will watch it over and over and over, and then I'll start, clacking on the old Google machine, and I will try to find out what led up to the story, what's happened since the story, is there more information, is there another angle. I just become sort of obsessed. So I'm here to share all that with you. I do recommend watching any of the documentaries that I cover, because they're great, and this is just sort of like more information about them. But if you're looking for some insight or more to the story or a clearer view of the details, stick around. And as I want to make sure everybody knows, there's a content warning in place because, like the title says, these are dark documentaries, and they do deal with some very dark subject matters. So today's documentary that I'm going to talk about is called Beware the Slender Man. Okay, so it's May of 2013, and we're in Waukesha County, Wisconsin. And there's three 12-year-old girls, and they're going to have a birthday party together. It's Morgan's birthday, and she's invited Anissa and Payton, her two friends, over to her house that evening before the sleepover. They're going to go to skate park. They're going to have a sleepover. So they get back to the house, and like I can just picture them like in the basement or like the playroom or whatever, like on their sleeping bags with all their heads together, playing on their devices. And they eventually fall asleep, and when they get up, mom serves them donuts and strawberries, and and then they ask if they can go to the local park, and mom says yes, of course, why wouldn't you be able to go to the park? So the three of them walk off to the park, and after playing on the playground at the park for a bit, they head into the bathroom. And Anissa and Morgan try to convince Payton to close her eyes, to lay down, to act like she's sleeping, to act like she's unconscious, but she's not interested in this. She doesn't understand what's going on. So they head out of the bathroom, right? And they're trying to convince Payton to play hide and seek. And she doesn't want to, so they are saying things like, you can pick the next game, we'll do this once, and then you can play the next one, and it'll be fine, let's just do this, and then we'll move on, trying to convince her. And she, I don't think that she really ever agrees to it, but Anissa starts to sort of pull her deeper into the forest and like away from the playground and the bike path and the road and all that stuff. So they're sort of deeper into the woods, and Morgan follows them. And this is the point where things turn really, really dark. So apparently Morgan had a knife, and she gave the knife to Anissa and said, you know all the soft spots. You do it. But Anissa hands it right back to Morgan and says, no, you do it. And the quote is that she said, go ballistic, go crazy, make sure she's down. Then Morgan tells Anissa that she's not going to do anything until Anissa tells her to. So Anissa walks about 5 feet away. She says, now. She says, now. And at this point, Morgan gets onto Payton's legs, and Payton says that she got really close to her face and whispered, I'm so sorry. And then she started stabbing her. Now this is her best friend for years now. And Payton asks, why are you doing this? And she starts crying, and she's, terrified. She's being stabbed by her best friends. And once Morgan decides that she's done stabbing, they get up and they cover her in some leaves, and they say, you need to stay right here and don't move so that you don't bleed out. We're going to go get help. And they walk away into the forest. not in any way like, getting help. And Payton, who is incredible, hero of the story, totally a survivor, so strong, so amazing. This 12-year-old girl manages to get herself out of this, leaf-covered area. She manages to get herself to the bike path where a bicyclist sees her and is like, and gets help, calls 911, what happened, and who stabbed you? And her response is, my best friend, which is just heartbreaking. So they walk for quite a while, and at some point Anissa just is like, forget this, I can't do it. Starts freaking out. She's like, I can't do it, I'm calling my mom, I can't, this is not working for me. She probably got tired or whatever it was, but she was just like pushed. And so when she decided she had enough of it, and that's when Morgan said, what, we're gonna go to prison. Like, if you call your mother, and if we don't continue on, we're gonna go to prison, maybe they'll even kill us. Like, we've already done it, we can't go back. Anissa's like inconsolable, and she's blaming Morgan for everything, and that's and saying Morgan's the one who stabbed her, Anissa didn't stab anyone. And they're screaming and crying and fighting, she's sobbing and crying. And Morgan says, Slender, please help us. But nothing happens. How did we get here? How in the world did we get to a place where two girls decided that they were going to stab their good friend? So Slender Man came from a posting in 2009. The web forum Something Awful held a contest challenging users to edit everyday photographs to appear paranormal. Okay, and so Eric Knudsen, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. If I'm not, huge apologies. Under the pseudonym of Victor Surge, submitted 2 black and white photos of children with this newly created Slender Man character lurking in the background. And the first one, the children are approximately 12 to 14 probably, and they're walking outside. They seem to all be walking to the same place, and it totally reminds me of like sleepover camp in like the 70s or 80s, and everyone's headed to the mess hall for like lunch, so they're sort of tired and they're hungry, and they're not necessarily smiling huge, they're just on their way. And there's like the student in the very front looks at the camera, but doesn't seem like anyone else in the picture is really aware that the picture is being taken. And in the background, way in the back, there's of this figure that is twice the size of the children, is sort of lurking in the background. So when you first look at the picture, it's a bunch of kids, oh, wait a minute, what's that back there? Is that something? Oh, that's creepy. It's one of those situations. So, and I think the same thing happens with the other picture, which is a playground with children much younger. So I'd say probably between like 3 and 6 are the age of the children. And there's 2 little girls in the front. I'd put them at 3 or 4. And one has walked up the ladder to the slide, and one is waiting her turn to climb the ladder for the slide. And they're both looking at the camera, and they're both smiling. And in the background, because there's more, playground toys, playground equipment in the background, and there are children back there, and there's this dark figure, but there's at least 4 children, but they're also in shadow surrounding it. And if you look really closely at this one, you can see that there might be some kind of tentacles protruding from the figure, but again, it's not clear, which is what makes it so creepy. Like paranormal pictures are usually like, do you see that? Do you not see that? If you're looking at ghost footage, it's like, did you see that? Did you not see that? Did you hear that? Did you not hear that? It's never clear. Pictures made it out to the internet. They won the concepts, and they get out there, and they're almost immediately memed. Now, I need to tell you the concept of mimetic theory, which I know sounds very fancy, but it's not. You've heard the term meme. A meme is an idea that travels through society the same way that a virus does. So it's contagious, and it replicates, and it changes. So this figure is like almost immediately embellished by other users, and the concept of Slender Man is so sort of it's shadowy. You know, there isn't a lot of concrete details, so anyone can sort of take him and turn him into whatever kind of boogeyman monster they need for their story, or they want a bad guy for a video game, or someone scary. You know, they have a lot of options with Slender Man to take it and take the urban legend and change it a little bit and make it their own. And he starts showing up like all over the web. He on Tumblr, on YouTube, on 4chan paranormal board, this whole mythology that's happening. A quote that I want to share with you is one of the more famous interpretations of him, which is,
"The palest man, the blackest suit, bigger than the tallest brute. 6 black arms will grab you up, or stalk you till you just give up. He'll leave your body not to eat, but to staple your corpse upon a tree. Fear the man, the Slender Man, for he can do what no one can."
pretty creepy, right? The sort of some of the talking head experts in this documentary explain that sociologists could use Slender Man as a way of tracking what scares people and what brings them together, what changes based on who's telling the story. That there was a sort of a shift at one point where Slender Man became sort of the guardian angel of children. So he's the Grim Reaper with a heart. Like, he's not kidnapping children, he's saving them, right? So the many of the photos of Slender Man watching a playground full of children, right? Is he there to hurt them? Is he there to save them? Is he some sort of savior to them? These girls were seeing him as someone that they needed to appease, but who they also wanted to be with. So it's a really sort of strange juxtaposition of being scared of him, but also wanting to be with him. The girls, when they went walking off into the forest, their plan was to find Slender's castle and live with him. So one of the experts asks, what causes children to believe these stories? Like, actually believe they're real? Being a believer makes you special. It makes you part of something. All you have to do is to believe, to be part of it. And that's so alluring to young and lonely teens. All you have to do is believe. That's it. You have to believe. I believe. And now I'm a part of something special. Also, Slender Man is unverifiable, right? You can't prove that he's fake or he's real. If you can't prove to me that he's not real, then he must be real. It's a faulty logic, but it is a logic that makes perfect sense, again, to brains that aren't done growing and maturing and changing, as well as broken brains that might be mentally ill. Morgan is the one, again, who actually stabbed Payton. Morgan, her mom tells us that she was a surprise, which means that she wasn't planned. They were not planning on having her, but they did. And mom says that from the moment she was born, she marched to the beat of her own drummer. She didn't care what people thought of her. She did her own thing. But, it never occurred to them that that Morgan thought that what she was reading on these sites, on this creepypasta, which is where Slender Man changed and grew and whatnot, that it was actually real. It never occurred to them that she really truly believed. But they did say that she loved to live in her own little world, and there may have been like these signs, but they're really only visible in retrospect, right? So it's like you can't really say like you should have seen this coming, because no one could have seen this coming. I mean, no one. Dad doesn't talk about so much about when she was a child, when she was like a baby, because obviously it's still a child. But he does talk about how the rules in the house, that by 7:30 every evening, she was expected to turn off the internet, whatever device she was using, and be with her family. The rules of their house was that you don't have your door closed ever unless you've just gotten out of the shower or you're getting ready for bed. And that she did close her door to practice choir, but that was the only time. Otherwise, the door was always open, and he would come in and see what she was working on. What are you doing? Let me see, and she never hid anything, and she never gave him a hard time for turning off the internet. So, that their family didn't see any sort of obsession. What I think is the most interesting part of this documentary is the footage of the interrogations. Now, the interrogations are done on the same day that this happens, right? So it's been about 6 hours since they stabbed their friend. And I'm going to do some quoting. So remember, Payton is Bella and Bella is Payton. It's the same thing because the girls refer to her by both. So the conversation that I find to be the creepiest is Morgan asks the investigator, do you know what happened to Bella?
Do you know what happened to Bella?
What happened to Bella? Is Bella your friend?
Mm-hmm. She's not Anissa. She's the one who was stabbed.
Stabbed? I'm not really sure.
Is she dead?
I don't know. She was taken to the hospital.
I was just wondering.
Now again, 12-year-old brains, but what? So the investigator asks Morgan if she knows why she's there, and she answers, because Anissa and I ran off after hurting Bella. So she knows that what she did was wrong and that they shouldn't have done it, but they did it anyway. Morgan tells the investigator that Anissa said that they had to do this to Bella when asked if they planned it out beforehand. And Morgan says that Anissa told her that Slender would kill their families if they didn't sacrifice Bella. Morgan says that Slender Man is this tall and faceless man who preys on children. So the investigator asks Morgan where she's seen him, and she says, I've seen him in my dreams. If he's stalking you, you see him in your dreams, and you see him when no one else does. And after a beat, she says, why do you need to know about Slender Man? And he tells her that he thinks Slender Man has a lot to do with what has happened on that day. Morgan admits to planning on this beginning in December. Remember, this is now the end of May. She continues and says that Bella was her best friend since the 4th grade. The investigator asks her why she picked Bella. She says she denies picking her and says that whoever it was that Anissa was talking with said that it had to be Bella. And that Anissa made it seem necessary that it be Bella. The investigator asks, why did it seem necessary? And Morgan says, Anissa was the one who kept saying it, and Morgan believed her. When Morgan's asked where the knife came from, she answers, the kitchen. I hope you're getting this, that Morgan is saying, well, Anissa introduced Slender Man to me, and Anissa told me that we needed to kill Bella, and Anissa told me that Slender Man was going to hurt our families, and she said that we had to do this. So what Morgan is saying is Anissa told me we had to do this, and that's why we did this. Just make that very clear, that seems to be what she's saying. There's another really upsettingly creepy moment where Morgan says, and I don't know what I did. It just sort of happened. It didn't feel like anything. It was like air. Now I'm going to switch over to Anissa's interrogation. She also has a creepy conversation. It's not quite as creepy, I think, as Morgan's, but she does say the strange thing where she says, can I ask you a question?
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
I just wanted to know how far I walked, because I'm usually not very athletic, and just want to know.
Okay.
Do you know how far that would be?
It's a really interesting place for her brain to focus because, I mean, she's literally in a police station. She's signed Miranda rights over, and she's explaining to what happened when her and her friend stabbed another friend, and she wants to know how far she's walked. Again, I know I say it a lot, but 12-year-old brains, man. Anissa admits that she was the one who introduced creepypasta to Morgan. So she was the one that was like, did you see this thing on Reddit? And it's creepypasta and it's so cool, whatever. But and when Anissa tells Morgan about Slender Man for the first time, Morgan's response is, I think I saw Slender when I was 5. So Morgan instantly believes it because she has even a memory of seeing this monster, man, thing, beast. So she instantly believes because she saw it when she was 5. And I think that when Anissa hears that Morgan's like, oh, I've seen him, it just makes it more real for Anissa. Okay. Anissa tells us that Slender has proxies or servants, and that Morgan suggests.
And Morgan said, hey, Anissa, we should be proxies. And I was like, okay, how would we do that? She said, we have to kill Bella. Okay.
At this point, the investigator says, did you really think you actually had to kill someone? And Anissa responds in the positive, yes. Investigator said, it doubles down, like, for real? Like, what did you think when she was telling you this? And Anissa's response is, I was scared, but also kind of excited. Wow. So I just want to make sure that you're hearing that Anissa is saying it was Morgan's idea and Morgan is saying it was Anissa's idea, right? So they're doing that, oh, she told me to thing. They're both asked where the knife came from. I told you before that Morgan said it came from the kitchen, and Anissa says she doesn't know where they keep their knives, but she knew Morgan had one because she showed Anissa while they were on their way to the park. Like, she showed her the handle, that it was like hidden. So the trial happens about 7 months after the incident, so they've been locked up since then. The lawyers for the girls are trying to move the proceedings to juvenile court, and this is when we get some really interesting information from Anissa's little sister, who says that she doesn't know where Slender Man came from because Anissa never really talked about him, and no one ever really talked about him at their house. And she never showed Maggie anything scary or bad and having to do with Slender Man or otherwise. And her sister then speculates that maybe she wanted attention because she didn't have a lot of friends at school. So I think really Anissa had Morgan and Morgan had Anissa, and that's pretty much what there was. She also explains that her older sister is a big believer. She believes sort of everything she hears. She really, you tell her a story and she believes it, which I think we can all tell that is true from the story that I've been telling. At the trial, the girls are not put on the stand. Who's put on the stand are the experts, the investigators, the interrogators, the people who talk to Morgan, Anissa, and Payton. So when the lawyer asks the interrogator for Morgan if she seemed remorseful for what she had done, the answer is no, absolutely none. There was no emotion from her at all. And I will tell you, because I've watched all of the, seen the footage, Anissa does do some like wiping of her eyes, like wiping away tears. But Morgan has almost no affect at all. She has no emotional response, and she has really... There's almost nothing there. It's just sort of flat, which is concerning, I think. So one of the experts talks about what they found in Morgan's room, and in her room there were many Slender Man pictures and drawings. Another expert says that if you try to tell Morgan that Slender Man isn't real, she gets really upset. And she says it not be disproven, so therefore it must be true. That when the police officer got there and spoke to Morgan, she said it had to be done. And he said, why? And her response was, the man ordered it. She believes she could communicate telepathically with Slender Man. If she didn't do what was ordered, she wouldn't be safe, and neither would her family. The first trial comes back and says, nope, we're going to try them as adults. So they appeal, right? So they're appealing that decision because they want them to be tried as children so that they're punished up until they're 18. As part of the trial, we get diagnoses of the girls. So just really quick before I get to the actual diagnoses, you need to know the difference between a delusion and a hallucination. So hallucination is when a person sees something that's not really there. A delusion is when a person believes an idea is real or true when it's not. So it's just an idea. Like, I believe in Slender Man, but believing in Slender Man is a delusion. Seeing Slender Man is a hallucination. So when Morgan says she sees Slender Man, hallucination. When Morgan and Anissa say they believe in Slender, that's a delusion. So we're going to start with Anissa because her diagnosis is much less complicated. So Anissa is diagnosed with delusional disorder caused by schizotypy. So no hallucinations, but yes to delusions. So she has a diminished ability to determine what is real and what is not. But there are no characteristics of psychopath or sociopath in this girl. This is where we hear Anissa's mom tell us that she wishes she had never gotten an iPad. I don't really know that you can blame it on the iPad. I don't know where you can blame it because it sounds like the parents were really on top of her, internet usage and she, they were always in and out of her room and seeing what she was doing. So it's really hard to figure out where the blame lies. Okay, much more complicated is Morgan's diagnosis. She has schizophrenia, unspecified, as well as oppositional defiance disorder. Now, oppositional defiance disorder is a type of behavior disorder. It's mostly diagnosed in childhood. Children with ODD are uncooperative, defiant, hostile towards peers, parents, teachers, other authority figures. It's at the level of a mental disorder. So this isn't just a kid saying, mom said, don't go out, so I'm going out. This is much more specific and diagnosable. Schizophrenia is actually one of the most studied and serious mental disorders in the human race. About 1% of the entire population has it. It's a psychotic illness. Stress often brings out the symptoms, and patients who have schizophrenia often lose track of reality. One hears things, one sees things, one feels things. And Morgan's mom tells us that her daughter has had hallucinations as early as 3. Mom explains that she didn't really realize that she had schizophrenia until this whole thing happened, and wishes that she could talk to Morgan about that diagnosis and the symptoms, but they've only just discovered it since the stabbing, and Morgan's been incarcerated since then. So the mother, you can tell, feels like she should have, I don't know about should have. I don't know that there's anything how she could have seen this, but you can tell that she's upset that she couldn't have figured this out before the tragedy. The expert on the stand says that Morgan hears things and sees things that others do not. She told a story about a classmate of hers being a Pegasus, but she was the only one who could tell. Then she says that she's really sleepy today because Snape came into her bedroom last night and kept her awake. There's this one moment where her mother says that she asked her, what are you going to watch on TV tonight? And Morgan's response is, it depends on who gets to choose. She's in a room alone. So it's which one of her imaginary friends gets to choose what's going to be on TV. One of the experts says that if these girls had had a bigger group of friends, this never would have happened because they would have shared it with their other friends, and the other friends probably would have put them in their place and said, no. This Slenderman's not real. You can't go killing, and they might not have been able to convince Morgan, but I bet they would have been able to convince Anissa because Anissa is not saying, Slender Man is real anymore. Anissa's saying, I got sucked into this thing and it wasn't appropriate. It wasn't right. It was wrong. But Morgan is still telling us that Slender Man's real. Okay, so at this point we meet for the first time. So we're well into the documentary and we meet Morgan's father for the first time. He's got tears streaming down his face. He is so upset and he admits to us that he has schizophrenia. He is so upset that he has handed this down. And my inference is that the reason that the mother at the beginning said, she wasn't planned was probably because they didn't want to pass on schizophrenia to their children. But they got pregnant and that's, so they had the child. They had no way of knowing one way or the other if she would have it. And you can tell he's taken on that burden. He has such guilt that he passed this to her. And he also explains that he really understands where she's coming from. He explains that she doesn't want to talk about her imaginary friends because she doesn't want them taken away. The father tells us that he runs numbers in his head, and he describes it like right now he's seeing a geometric pattern that's glowing. And all he wants is to be able to talk to her about it. But as the mother said earlier, she's been incarcerated the entire time that they've even known that she has this. So it's just, you can see that the father is just he's going through it. It's bad. It's hard. I can't imagine. Dad starts to tell us about how people will call them and leave messages and say their child is evil and that she should burn in hell and that she's terrible and she's awful. And he's like, I wish people would understand that her brain is broken and much more fractured. I've actually heard a TED Talk on schizophrenia where the person said that it's not a broken brain, it's a fractured brain. It's in so many pieces. Now there is definitely treatment. There are medicines people can take. There are schizophrenics that are amazing members of society. And the documentary ends with Wisconsin Court of Appeals up. Now, I really like this documentary. I think it's really interesting. Some people think that it's a little long, and there's a little too much information, but I love information. More information, the better. So I'm really happy with it. But my big complaint is that you stop the story and it's not over, right? Like all we know is that they are going to be tried as adults. So what does that tell us, right? So. Morgan was charged with attempted first-degree homicide, which is a Class A felony, and Anissa was charged with attempted second-degree homicide, which is a Class B felony. So Anissa, in 2017, Anissa pled guilty to being part of an attempted second-degree homicide. A jury then found her not guilty by mental disease or defect. Okay. So Anissa is sentenced to 25 years to life. An indeterminate sentence involving at least 3 years locked confinement and involuntary treatment in a state psychiatric institute, followed by communal supervision until the age of 37. Supervision is like probation, but lighter. So you still have to check in, but it's reserved for cases where the guilt is known, but the guilty verdict was not achieved. So Anissa was found not guilty by reason of insanity. So supervision, not probation. At a court hearing in March 2021, Anissa, who by then was 19, so she's already had the 3 years of involuntary treatment, she submits a letter to the court stating that she's sorry and deeply regretful for the agony, pain, and fear that I've caused, not just to Lautner, that's Payton's last name, not just to Payton, but to my community as well. Anissa states, I hate my actions from May 31st, 2014, but through countless hours of therapy, I no longer hate myself for them. On July 1st, 2021, the Waukesha County Judge Michael Boren, again, hope I'm pronouncing that right, ordered that Anissa be released from the Winnebago Mental Health Institute. On September 13th, 2021, Anissa was released. Multiple stipulations to include a 24-hour GPS monitoring requiring her not to leave Waukesha County without permission. She will also have her internet usage monitored. She will not be allowed to use any forms of social media. And she'll be required to take medicine and will be personally escorted to regular counseling sessions by a caseworker. She's also required to live with her father during her supervision. So this has been quite a controversy because she's out. I mean, she's out monitored, but she's still out, right? And she did plan a murder. Morgan accepts a plea offer under which that she will not go to trial but would be evaluated by psychiatrists to determine how long she should be placed in a mental hospital. She later pled guilty, but was found not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect, just like Anissa, and she was diagnosed with schizophrenia, from which her father also suffers. So Morgan was given the maximum sentence, which is 40 years to life. In addition to involuntary treatment in a state psychiatric institute until complete resolution of symptoms or until the age of 53, whichever happens first, followed by continued communal supervision, periodic reevaluations and or reinstitution, and further treatment is needed as required by the sentence imposed. So, while she will periodically and have opportunities to petition for her release from the mental health facility, she will remain under institutional care for the duration of her sentence. And during her trial, she was committed to the Winnebago Mental Health Institute, and she was the youngest patient ever there. Morgan appealed in 2021 under the assumption that she should have been tried as a child or with a lesser infraction, and that appeal was denied. Okay, finally, we have reached the most important part of this story, and that is Payton Lautner, and she's the survivor. I'm not going to call her a victim. I'm going to call her a survivor because she is a warrior. She is amazing, okay? So Payton was stabbed 19 times and suffered from soft tissue damage to her arms and her legs. But the wounds on her abdomen that might have been fatal because they hit major organs. So there were 2 that needed like serious surgery to fix. And one of her stabbings missed a major artery by the width of a human hair, is what the surgeons say. If they had just been a millimeter to the side, this girl would never have survived. Arteries get, if you get an artery cut, that's it, you bleed out. Unless you're like at the hospital, or an ENT is right there and knows what to do. Like arteries, you don't want to cut those. So this incredible young woman, Payton, she undergoes 6 hours of surgery. But before she goes in, she's able to communicate the names of her assailants to the police. She even says later, I wrote on whiteboards to communicate because I couldn't speak much. I had an intubation tube in my lungs because I couldn't breathe on my own for a while. But she survived her attack, and she has gone on to rebuild her life in amazing ways. So she says it was really difficult for her to trust again, even family members. She would sleep with scissors under her bed to make her feel safer. Payton has come out and said that she has forgiven Morgan's mother, which I think is mature and beautiful and wonderful of her. When she was asked in an interview about Morgan, Payton says that she thought that Morgan got exactly what she deserved, and she does not want to be anywhere near her. She wants to stay away from her forever. As of the fall of 2020, Payton was a senior in high school and was planning to attend medical school. She said that her attack had given birth to the aspirations of pursuing a career in the medical field. Now, wait till you hear this quote from her. She's, like I said, she's a warrior. She's amazing. She kicks ass. I'm so impressed with her. She says that she's thankful to Morgan for helping her refigure her life. She said, and I quote, I would say, because of what she did, I have the life I have now. I really, really like it, and I have a plan. I didn't have a plan when I was 12, and now I do because of everything I went through. I wouldn't think that someone who went through what I did would ever say that, but that's truly how I feel. Without the whole situation, I wouldn't be who I am. So Payton, who is in her 20s and likely a university student, is understandably keeping a very low profile. And as I did not go researching any more on her, I just used the information from articles that had already been out because I'm respecting her wish to have a low profile, and we owe her that respect. And that is the story of Beware the Slender Man. I'd love to hear what you think down below. And if you enjoyed this, could you do all those YouTube things, you know, the click and like and subscribe and bells and things? I'd really appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out with me today, and I'll see you next week. Bye.